The Life of Swami Vivekananda by his Eastern and Western disciples. Advaita Ashram, 4 Wellington Lane, Calcutta 13. Preface to the first edition. It is now 10 years since Swami Vivekananda entered final illumination. It is 50 years since his personality was ushered upon earth. It is therefore befitting that these events should be conterminous with and celebrated by publishing of the life he lived. For years it has been the desire of Eastern disciples at Advaita Ashram to publish an authoritative biography of their teacher so as to present to the world at large and to the posterity the vision, the ideas and the work and the greatness of that personality which Swami's life embodied. In the beginning it was planned to incorporate a biographical sketch in the last volume of Mayavati Memorial Edition of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, but by both reason of supreme import of Swami's life to the world and the vast collection of biographical facts of the most interesting nature and of far-reaching significance gathered during the last 7 years, this idea was abandoned. Instead, the life is now presented in 3 separate volumes. Much has been written in this work in the way of interpretation. For many of the facts of Swami's life without explanation of the Hindu religious and social ideals, and without some reference to the psychology of the mystical consciousness would confuse the casual reader and might even seem improbable. The world knows that Swami was a giant intellect, a great scholar and a great orator, a patriotic Hindu and a powerful preacher of the Vedanta. But that is knowing only one phase of this many-sided genius. Even to those who knew him personally, the Swami, both as a lad and as a man, was too complex a character to be readily understood. He was a man of original thoughts and numerous moods, each a world in itself, and when any single one of them came upon him, he was so intense that for that time being he would identify himself surely with that particular state of mind above all others. Thus it happened that many persons saw him from widely varying angles and spoke of him chiefly in the sense in which they personally understood him. This accounts for many different presentations of the Swami. Efforts have been made in this work to present the Swami in all his moods and varied illuminations so as to reveal the man as he was. Great pains have been taken to authenticate all the private and public sources of information in connection with the biographical facts, and much discretion has been exercised in embodying these so as to offer to public a complete and reliable work. An excellent advantage was that most of these who knew Swami intimately are still alive. There are many disciples both of Swami himself and of his master Sri Ramakrishna's, whose reminiscences by the means of talks and writings and whose private diaries and published works have given every opportunity for ascertaining the accuracy of statements. Then there are the numerous letters and writings published and unpublished of the Swami himself, from which to verify the character and the development of his mind and his entire personality. We heartily acknowledge our indebtedness to all these valuable authorities and sources of information, too numerous to mention individually here. Everything in the way of illuminating anecdote and interpretation has been included, and all accounts have been diligently studied so as to keep within the bounds of legitimate biographical treatment. In order to facilitate the reading and to render the treatment of such a lengthy history of a life easier to approach, it has been presented in a series of short chapters under descriptive headings. Attempt throughout has been made to portray the elements of life, character, growth and work in as simple and as direct as possible, and to picture in particular the condition under which Swami's life was developed and expressed. This necessitated an exposition of ideas and activities of the modern transition in India, and a comprehensive sketch of the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, who is regarded as the unique spiritual character of modern India. It necessitated also the recital of the modern religious transition in the West, because of Swami's multifarious work there, and also the rise and the development of the monastic order of which he was the moving spirit, and the great philanthropic organization known as Ramakrishna Mission, which he founded. First volume presents a narrative of his personality until his 24th year and the training he underwent at the feet of his master for the attainment of spiritual insight and realization. It takes into account the themes around which Swami's life is drawn, the themes of Hinduism, its setting, its basis and its structure. It reveals the growth of a gigantic mind through modern agnosticism into complete saintship. It presents the character of Swami's master in the light in which Swami himself understood him. The reader will become familiar with Swami in the first volume as Narain or Narendra, the name by which he was known both to the master and to his brother disciples and friends, as his proper name was Narendranath Datta. The first volume shows how Narendra, having become de-Hinduized, became re-Hinduized through his perception of the synthesis of Hinduism as lived and realized by his master. For the sake of clear understanding of the process by which this was effected, several chapters of the first volume are devoted to the elucidation of Hindu religious and philosophic consciousness. One sees in the first volume the man, the saint, and the prophet in the making. The second volume deals with the narrative of Swami's life as a wandering monk and later on as a bearer of message of Hinduism to the West. It takes the reader through the scenes of Swami's life of intense austerities and sadhanas in the Banagore Mutt and of his travels and silent preaching throughout the length and breadth of Hindustan prior to his departure for America and his triumphant public career as apostle of Vedantism during his sojourns in the West. It shows how at the Parliament of Religions held in Chicago in 1893, the Swami became a worldwide figure and a prophet of Hinduism, and it dwells on the momentous significance of his ideas of his work as a spiritual leader. The third volume, it speaks of Swami's attempt at remodeling the Indian thought world and his restating the entire content of the Sanatana Dharma and the ancient Aryan culture and of his bringing about a religious revival in India. It reveals him as the founder of monasteries and center of public service, as a man of sorrows whose heart bleed for the millions of Indian poor and distressed, and also as a man of joys, thundering in all the times in the hearing of his co-religionists the glories of Hinduism and the bright future of his race. It records his activities during his second visit to the West and gives a vivid picture of his subsequent life in India. Finally, it speaks of Swami's influence on Indian life and his message and mission as a whole, and it also speaks of the end. Publishers are well aware that this great life has been lived too recently for the public to gauge fully the import and the possibilities it represents. They know that many of the statements and interpretation concerning the Swami recorded in this work may not meet with universal acceptance, but they are firmly convinced that time will substantiate their value in matters not in what light the present generation by reading this life may regard the Swami, be it as a teacher, patriot, prophet or a saint. It matters not what they accept his teaching and his ideas only partially or in their entirety, but all will have to admit that in his life there was made manifest a tremendous force for the moral and spiritual welfare and uplifting of humanity, irrespective of caste, creed, nationality or time, and that as such it commands itself for careful study and reflection. Those who have produced this work are the Swami's outspoken followers. Nay, more than that, they are his disciples and co-workers, representing as they do the brotherhood of Advaita Ashram founded by the Swami himself. They have made every endeavor to give a true and comprehensive revelation of their master. They fully realize that there is an enormous undertaking and responsibility. They realize also how difficult it is to bring a man into the narrow compass of a biography. This is true of every great life, but this is particularly true of Swami Vivekananda. The limitation of biographical treatment and descriptions have been constantly before them. On the other hand, even the telling of this life is sufficiently inspiring, as of itself it affords a revelation. They earnestly believe that more the life and the teaching of Swamis are made known, the more will the spiritual perspective of humanity be widened and more will the Hindus take up the methods set forth by him for the reorganization of their dharma in consonance with the modern needs and modern problems. They therefore make no apologies as to their understanding of him or for the method in which they have presented him. They have been actuated by the spirit of discipleship. In sending out this work into the world, they are guided by the hope that many a seeker after truth, having a deeper knowledge of this great life, may be helped to solve the problems of existence, and having an entry into the world of richer spiritual insight, may be inspired to follow his example to travel upon that path of righteousness which the Swami pointed out in the words of Vedas to be Atmano Mokshartam Jagat Hitaya Cha, for the salvation of one's own soul and for the good of the world. The Eastern and the Western disciples, Advaita Ashram, Mayavati, Himalayas, 4th of July 1912.